it was interesting to see somebody who had like their creative self kind of stripped away from them, like Riz Ahmed's character in this film. I thought that was one of the things that made this movie so interesting.
Drive-By Movies here. You are watching
Fresh Releases.
My name is James.
My name's Blaze.
And today we're checking out the new exclusive to Amazon Prime, The Sound of Metal.
This crappy, mundane world suddenly becomes radiant and magnificent. All the fear is gone. That place will never abandon you.
The Sound of Metal is about a heavy metal drummer whose life is thrown into freefall when he begins to lose his hearing. So this was a movie I actually knew nothing about getting into. Like when you mentioned like, oh, let's check out The Sound of Metal, I was like, what are you talking about? Is that a movie? I didn't even know what The Sound of Metal was. But I was very pleasantly surprised by this film and actually kind of excited to talk about it because it was such a interesting plot for a movie. I think we can get into like the specifics of that, but I am curious. I did enjoy this movie. I'm curious what your thoughts were on this film.
Yeah, I mean, normally, like I'd say 94% of the time it's movies that you did research on and like you were interested to watch, and I'm just like, I'm down for the ride. Hell yeah. How did I find out about this movie? I think I was just looking up movies that were supposed to play at film festivals or something, and this is one that I read about or found out through Letterboxd, but I'm pretty sure I found out about it through film festivals, and I was just like, oh, this sounds pretty interesting. Like, let me save it to my watch list, and totally forgot about it. But then when I saw that it was coming out on Amazon Prime, I was just like, oh, sick. Like, I have that movie on my watch list. I definitely want to check that out. Like, perfect timing and stuff. Could use a break from all the Christmas movies we've been watching and stuff. It's nice to, have a little bit of balance and everything. But me being I'm wearing a metal t-shirt right now. Like, I just love metal music and stuff. And Riz Ahmed, I think, is one of my favorite upcoming actors since I first saw him in Nightcrawler. It's fantastic in Four Lions. It was cool. He was. I wish he had a bigger role in Star Wars Rogue One and stuff. But this just seemed like an interesting role to see him in because you could see like he definitely like changed a lot to star in this role. He learned ASL for this movie, learned to drum for this movie, and he's ripped as hell in this movie too. Like maybe he's always been ripped, but he always came off pretty scrawny, especially in Nightcrawler. But yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. It's not like one of the best of the year, but it's very different and it reminded me a lot of like other things and stuff. But yeah, I highly enjoyed it and definitely would recommend it right off the bat and stuff. But yeah, Blaze, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess before we even get into it, you might as well just recommend it. I mean, if you haven't heard of The Sound of Metal, I think we both agree that you should go check it out. Pause this, come back to this later after you finish watching the movie. But I mean, if you care about spoilers, there's not really too much of spoilers in this movie. I feel like if you're watching this review, you probably already checked the movie out. But yeah, this movie is just I kind of agree with what you said, where it's like maybe it's not the like greatest film, but I think when you set the bar to where 2020 should be, this is like one of the best films of the year. No shade on this movie. That definitely sounds like I'm throwing shade, but I feel like this is easily going to be one of the best movies that we've seen in 2020. Besides, I'm gonna throw it back to my one of my favorite films of the year, which is Baccarat. I think that's probably my favorite film of the year, but some people might argue that could be a 2019 film. So, and I mean, if it was a great film, so the odds are it's probably from 2019, being how bad 2020 is. So getting into this movie though, I thought this was just like an interesting movie that used sound so effectively. It used sound in such a cool way while being a movie that's, simultaneously about, being deaf, being like somebody who is part of the non-hearing community, part of the deaf community, and like kind of getting it look into that world while losing what his world is totally about. Like it's a musician who basically loses his ability to even engage in what he's done his whole life, you know, be creating this metal music, being in a band, going on tour, doing all these things. And if you can't hear, like, you can't really drum, so or, you know, let alone play with other members of your band. So it was interesting to see somebody who had like their creative self kind of stripped away from them, like Riz Ahmed's character in this film. I thought that was one of the things that made this movie so interesting. You know, Riz really gives his all into this role. It's a pretty cool role because it's not really one you'd see normally. I feel like we rarely see, like, okay, we see like the classic days of rock, but you rarely see, like, you know, a character that's like into metal so much so where they're like actually part of a metal band that's touring like nationwide. So that was an interesting, you know, look into this type of music that you don't really see that often. We see, you know, interesting stories from like the metal community, like, you know, maybe portrayals like Metalocalypse or a Deathgasm or something like that, but you never see it from like that grungy, someone who's a touring musician that's trying to make a living on something that really isn't that profitable, but they're so passionate about it that they invest everything they can into it, and that is almost stripped away from his character when he loses his hearing.
Yeah, perfectly said. I mean, it's a livable career that a lot of metal musicians live in and stuff, but, you know, there isn't as much money as in it that it used to be and stuff. So when you see a lot of bands these days and stuff, you know, it's more like a cult scene and stuff. They're making money off of just like people that they rely on going to and stuff. Like, there isn't really money in album sales. Most money's made from merch, so you have to tour and stuff and get your name out that way. So it definitely captured that vibe and stuff where, like, and also just like it wasn't over the top metal and stuff. Like, I think all we really get from rock music these days are like movies where it's like Rock of Ages, where it's Tom Cruise wearing leather pants, or, you know, the Bryan Singer Queen movie that came out recently. The name's like rolling past my tongue, but
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Just like, yeah, there we go, Bohemian Rhapsody. Just like, you know, like Bohemian Rhapsody was very like, you know, glamorous with their style and stuff. And of course, like, I loved Queen, but just like, you know, like there's a lot of other rock genres and stuff, and it's a lot more casual than you expect. Like, yeah, Riz has a bunch of tattoos and stuff, and yeah, he's just wearing like, he's got blonde hair and stuff where he bleached his hair, but, you know, he's wearing very casual clothes that you would just expect from like someone who's into punk or metal. It wasn't over the top and stuff. It actually felt like it's how someone would dress these days and stuff. And same thing with Olivia Cook too. Like, she's not too recognizable with her shaved, or I think they're actually dyed eyebrows and stuff. Like,
bleached her eyebrows.
It's quite different. What was that?
She bleached her eyebrows.
Bleached her eyebrows, yeah. And that's, you know, a common thing that you see in a lot, and like, you know, the current music scene and stuff. So it was cool. It just felt like it was over the top, and it was someone who definitely understood that music scene. But that's not what this movie's about, though. It's mainly about him going deaf too. And like, when it gets to that, like, it was really cool to see, because there's not a lot of stuff that's ever been filmed this way that I've seen, at least. Only thing that comes to mind is my favorite episode ever of Master of None. A lot of it I remember followed. I haven't seen the episode in a while, but I remember there's an episode that follows like a French couple, then also follows like this deaf person as well too. It's just like an episode that had nothing to do with Aziz Ansari. It was just about different lifestyles of different people in New York and stuff, and that to this day was my favorite episode, and it's the one that I still remember. And I remember when that episode came out, it was the episode that everyone was talking about, was saying, oh, this is one of the best episodes of TV I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And now I kind of want to rewatch it and stuff, just because like that's the only time I've ever really seen a movie like focus so much on like deaf people. Now we have like a full length, pretty good movie, like really good movie about, you know, what it's like and stuff. It doesn't focus on just going deaf. It also focuses on people who are deaf, as well as like, you know, ex-drug addicts trying to overcome those obstacles too. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff to like talk about, bring up and stuff. Stuff that, you know, like might have been seen in other movies, but I thought this movie blended a lot of stuff together very well.
Yeah, you remind me, actually, I think that's my favorite episode of Master of None, or not just of Master of None. That's probably one of my favorite episodes of like an episodic TV series, but also I don't know if you saw that show, High Maintenance, but there's an episode that takes place all from a dog's perspective. That's also one of my favorite episodes of TV. I think those
I'm aware
two
of the
episodes,
show, but I've never seen that episode.
It's very similar. It's this dog that runs away from home, and the whole episode takes place from his point of view, and it's just hilarious. And I think what I'm getting to in like those episodes of TV, and what I enjoyed so much seeing in this movie that was similar, is it gives you this look into somebody's lifestyle who's getting into a new I guess, a new lifestyle, a new point of view that not many people get that exclusive look into the deaf community. I know Netflix recently came out with a show this year called Deaf U, which is like the perspective of these deaf college students attending a pretty much predominantly, it's not exclusively, but a predominantly deaf college. And that was interesting. I did watch the show, but it is, you know, more of a reality take. It's a little more kind of fake, where this is that taking that narrative approach, does really cool things with how, you know, Riz Ahmed kind of is inducted into this community of this deaf community. That's really interesting. They have this cool thing going. But I think one of my favorite things about this movie has to be the fact that it's basically a movie about a junkie who isn't really a junkie, because his vice isn't something that necessarily most people would see as, you know, something that's bad. Obviously, if you're a heroin junkie, pretty much everyone agrees that heroin is horrible. You shouldn't be a heroin junkie, you know? But this is somebody who's addicted to sound. This is somebody who's addicted to loud, fast music, and it's ultimately his downfall. It's what causes him to lose his creative self. So it was kind of a cool concept where it took something that you wouldn't predominantly think is like sort of a negative and kind of twist it into being this negative thing. But I really like the journey that Riz Ahmed's character takes place, because he kind of lets all that go towards the end of the film. And I thought that the ending was very poetic. The entire film is just, I wouldn't say it's like the most fun movie, obviously, but I really appreciated it.
Yeah, all great points and stuff. Like, pretty much just what I love most about most movies is just seeing like characters try to overcome like themselves and stuff, and overcome crazy obstacles. And like, you know, with this movie, just like with it involving metal music, and then just like something that I'm not too familiar with, it was just a really joyful watch despite how depressing it was. And there's a lot of cool like techniques used within this film too. Like, you hear a lot of tones that are used in horror films, but like, you know, it really worked well for capturing some of the moments of just like the death struggles he's going through. And yeah, I mean, sounds like we're both in agreement. We're both recommending it. It's one of my favorites of the year. Not going to be in my top, but like it's up there and stuff. Like, I can't wait to pull out our top 5 in a few weeks from now and stuff. But definitely go check it out. Like, I highly recommend watching it. You can rent it through our Amazon affiliate link in our description box below. It's a great way to help our show. Do that. Leave a comment. Let us know what you thought about the movie, and we'll continue the conversation.
And guys, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, smash that like button, and click that notification bell to get all of our latest updates.
Also, if you can't get enough of us here on YouTube, we are on Twitter. We're also on TikTok. We're also on Instagram. Check out all those links. The descriptions are right here on this video. Be sure to follow us on there. That's going to conclude this week's episode, though, of Fresh Releases. Tune in next week for a brand new video.